I feel like Suda. I'm sorry, Suda. I just can't. There's somebody trying to join. I'm sorry. Just nobody else is getting in now. Okay. So welcome to Nerd. And yeah, I don't know how to follow that intro, but uh, really the goal here is provide you some first aid training for the outdoors, and yeah, hopefully just leave you with a little bit of knowledge that maybe you didn't have before. And if I were to find out someday that you were in a situation in the outdoors and this training helped you in any sense, that'd make me feel really good about myself, and that makes the class uh, and on the time put in worth it for me. So let's get into it. Uh, so quickly, introduction and objectives. Can everybody see my Google Slides? You can raise your hand.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Alan. Okay. Uh, so we're gonna learn the ABCDE approach. We'll try to go over some, I say master, but let's see, we'll go over some basic CPR and wound care and prepare for some of nature's surprises. So let's jump into it. So now let's meet our fellow adventurers. Um, if people want, just because we have, we're virtual, um, you can share a fun fact about yourself and why you're interested in it. Let's just make that a chat thing. So if you'd like in the chat, if you're engaged, just share a fun fact about yourself. That'd be great. Take a second to do that and try to get to know who's in the class with you. I'm gonna crack open the saps. Electrolyte drink. Great stuff. San Marcos. So really a quick overview of the course. We're going to try to cover everything from basic first aid principles to specific wilderness emergencies. Here we go. I broke this course down into 4 parts. So this is part 1 of 4. Travel a ton. So sorry, I broke this down into 4 parts. The thinking there is that I personally don't do very well with sitting through long courses. That's just not how I retain information. I find I retain things in like 90-minute chunks. And I thought because I feel like this is such valuable information, let's break it into 4 chunks, give people a chance to really get engaged and retain the information. Kara's hilarious. Okay, so the great outdoors, why first aid matters. We're going to try to understand the unique challenges of outdoor environments and try to understand really the difference between urban first aid and wilderness first aid. Out of curiosity, if you could just raise your hand just in the chat, there should be a little button at the top that says raise. Just raise your hand if you've been in a situation that has to do with, been in a first aid situation in the outdoors. Kara, huh? Okay, gosh. So we have a few people. So I'll personally dive into a wilderness first aid issue that, gosh, I've been involved in a lot of different wilderness first aid issues, but I'll give you guys an anecdote from a connect and hike example. Our last trip to Big Bend, everything was great. We got all set up. We were camping at the Chisos Basin. There we are Saturday morning. Everybody wakes up. It was a very cold night in February. It went down to like -2 Celsius. So that's about, I don't know. It's cold for Texans, let's put it that way, in the teens, I guess. And we had a girl wake up at 7:30 a.m., go to one of the campground restrooms, and she fainted and hit her head, and she was bleeding all over the restroom. There's no cell service where we were at that time, and we're supposed to start a big hike in about 15 minutes. That happens. That's when you're in the outdoor world, that stuff happens. And when you're in the urban world, that stuff happens too. But not having cell phone service, being in a new area, um, being exposed to the outdoor conditions, we were tenting. These were all things that turned a bad situation into a bit of a nightmare situation for us. Um, and at that time, I hadn't taken any kind of wilderness first aid. Um, we were able to navigate the situation fine, but I couldn't help but feel that I wish I had something just to give me a little bit more confidence and composure in that kind of situation. Okay. And at the end of the class, we can share some anecdotes of our own, yeah, wilderness first aid stories and so on and so forth. Okay, so raise your hands. Who here has heard of the ABCDE approach? I wonder if it'll just be Alan. We'll see. Okay, great. Scott's heard of it. Perfect. Okay, so really the ABCDE approach is fairly straightforward. We're talking about airway, breathing, circulation, disability, and exposure. Again, this class, the outcome of this class isn't to have you be a full-fledged EMT. This is just to give you a bit of a perspective on wilderness first aid. So here we go. Airway, ensuring it's clear. We're going to want to ensure that a person's airway is clear. Again, we're outside. There's going to be different things going on in an outdoor environment versus, say, like an office building. There may be fires, campfires. Um, there may be cold water around. I just went and hiked the Narrows in Utah a few months ago. That's a hike through cold water. You just never necessarily know around, but um, you don't want that person, say, if they fall over in shallow water, you don't want them bringing in water, you don't want them bringing in smoke. So get them out of that environment if you can. And then we're just going to want to try to make sure the mouth are clear. So that could be lifting the head, tilting the chin back, looking into the mouth, seeing if everything's clear. That's one method I use. So A is for airway and the ABCDE method. So now we're going to be talking about breathing. Once the airway is confirmed clear, assess the patient's breathing, look, listen, and feel for breaths. If they're not breathing, you may need to begin rescue breathing or CPR, depending on your training and resources available. In a wilderness context, help will be delayed. Having the skills to provide prolonged resuscitation can be critical. So, if you're backpacking, you're through hiking, something happens, somebody needs emergency breathing. I doubt you're going to have a respirator and a mask and the proper fitting for that person. So there you go. Consider the fact that you may be doing rescue breathing out there in the wilderness. So knowing CPR can be critical. So again, B is for breathing, C is for circulation. We're going to try to keep the blood flowing. We're going to check the patient's pulse at a major artery like the carotid or radial artery. Make this bigger. To assess the circulation, look for signs of bleeding and take steps to control it, such as applying direct pressure, using a tourniquet, or packing the wound. Shock is a common concern with significant injuries or bleeding, so be prepared to treat it by keeping the patient warm and elevating their legs if there are no injuries from preventing you from doing so. Okay. So now we'll jump to D. D is for disability. Quickly assess the patient's neurological function. This includes checking their level of consciousness using the AVPU scale. All right. Alert, response to verbal stimuli, response to pain, unresponsive, or the Glasgow Coma Scale. I really wanted to include images of these scales. Just to be frank with y'all, I just didn't have time to throw that together. But the main thing is in the wilderness, you're going to want to consider potential disabilities like fractures or spinal injuries, which may require a mobilization. I'll highlight this so I can go back to this. Oops. Here we go. Okay, exposure, protecting from the elements. Assess the patient's exposure to the elements and take steps to protect them from environmental hazards. As I said, my kind of most memorable well, that's a lie. We had another temperature-related incident at a Connect and Hike event. We had somebody who experienced heat stroke, and that was quite a trying time. That was at Ink Lake State Park in the summer. So personally, I've dealt with a cold weather incident recently, and I've dealt with a warm weather incident recently. So um, just food for thought. I haven't seen a lot of breaks or anything of that nature. So anyway, back to exposure. This includes everything from heat stroke and hypothermia to burns from the sun or cold injuries like frostbite. In the wilderness, environmental factors can significantly impact a patient's condition. Make sure they're insulated from the ground, covered to protect them from the elements, and move to a safer location if necessary. So in both incidents that I experienced, that safer location was a vehicle with air conditioning um, for the short term. Um, that's just kind of the reality. If you're out in the wilderness, I mean, your nearest um, refuge, uh, maybe it's a visitor center at a state park, but I feel like 7 out of 10 times it's probably just going to be a car with some air conditioning and kind of get that person's temperature regulated, get some fluids into them if they need them, so on and so forth. Just get them secure and comfortable. Again, that's pending they don't have any injuries that prevent them from, say, sitting in a vehicle. Okay, so now we're going to jump into introduction to CPR. Just raise your hands. Who here has taken a traditional CPR class before? Awesome. Okay. So we'll just kind of quickly go over it. Again, this is a virtual class, so you know, um, I feel like CPR is something that hopefully everybody has a chance to actually get, literally hands-on experience with. I don't think I'd be doing you any justice to try to do that over the camera. So, but here we'll quickly go over CPR. Here we go. CPR technique. We'll call for backup. Let's see. We have a. That's awesome. That's an awesome message, Kate. Oh gosh. Okay. So, so you're gonna CPR technique. Call for backup, shout for help, or send someone to dial emergency services. So I'll go over this quickly. I think this is extremely relevant to sidetrack. Um, Raise your hand if you have an emergency locator beacon or you have an emergency situation device, whatever you'd like to call it, an SOS device of some sort. How many people on the call have that, like a Garmin InReach spot device, a Zoleo? Um, Maybe even part of your risk management plan is like the iPhone emergency services button. Okay, so not many people. All right. Well, I quickly want to jump. I want to kind of tie that into this slide. Um, Calling for backup in the situations I've dealt with, the two that I've quickly mentioned, but I'll drop a third in there. We had a lady at Guadalupe National Park try to call a helicopter for a rescue. I won't dive too deep into that one, but what two out of those three situations have in common is that we were kind of relying on cell service. We were relying on our cell phones. If there were an emergency, our call for backup was a cell phone. And in two out of those three situations, we didn't have cellular service. So we've, it's not much, make sure you have a risk management plan. Um, I know that's not necessarily on the slide, but just like really look into something like a Garmin InReach Mini, look into a Garmin 66i, a Spot device, a Zoleo device, just something that works off of satellites and not cell phone towers. because maybe that's even a ham radio. Again, you're going to need a ham radio operator's license, but just don't rely on the cell phone. You're going to be doing a terrible job calling for backup if you can't even call for backup. So I just really want to hit that home. If you have any questions about um, emergency devices, please reach out. It's just such a big part of the emergency um, first aid equation is actually being able to call for that EMT or that helicopter or whatever the heck you need to call for. All right, so we'll move forward. Fun tip about the iPhone SOS feature. So that's what and that's one thing, Max, like just just food for thought. I know I think actually Alan, I put Alan on the spot in all of these, but um just look into it. Can that iPhone SOS feature is what's happening when you click that button? How pragmatic is that? I guess I can't vouch for it, but is that still relying off of cell phone towers or is that relying off of satellites? Just food for thought. Like if you're in a canyon, what's happening? So it's relying off satellites. All right. Well, I really don't have much experience with it, but that's great to hear if that is the case. Google says yes. Okay. Good, nice. Yeah, and again, like, having that Garmin, having that iPhone SOS feature, knowing that that exists, having that as um a redundant, safety measure. I love that. Uh Maybe it's not practical for everybody to go out and buy an InReach and then pay for the subscription. So, but just food for thought. That's awesome that you have both. Okay, sorry guys. So back to the slide. Safe space. Make sure the scene is safe for the patient. Um, and make sure you're personally safe as well. Okay, now we're going to check responsiveness. Gently tap their shoulder, ask if they're okay. No response may mean it's CPR time. Now, airway alignment, tilt their head back slightly, open the airway. Think of it as positioning a gardening hose so the water flow looks smooth. Listen and look. Get close and see if they're breathing. Listen for breath sounds. Feel for breath on your cheek for no more than 10 seconds. Press the beat. Find the center of the chest. Stack hands, straighten your arms, and push down hard and fast. Aim for 100 to 120 compressions per minute, like keeping up with a fast beat. In the first aid classes I've taken, they'll usually, say use a song as a reference. I think it's Bee Gees Staying Alive. They usually ironically mention. Um, Now you have to breathe. If you're trained, give 2 rescue breaths after every 30 compressions. If not, just keep pumping to the beat. Repeat. Keep the rhythm until help arrives, or if the person starts to show any signs of life. Um, Stay cool. You've got this. Just keep the beat and help will be on its way. Okay. Bandaging basics. Assess the scene. Ensure the area is safe before you start. No extra surprises. Clean up. If possible, gently clean the wound with clean water. Let's avoid any unwanted guests like bacteria. Direct pressure. Apply steady pressure to stop the bleeding. Think of it like pressing a pause button on the flow. Dress it up. Cover the wound with a sterile dressing. Keep it clean and tidy. Wrap it right. Use a bandage to secure the dressing. Again, not too tight. You don't want to stop circulation. That'll be another issue down the line. And then check circulation after bandaging. Make sure you can still feel a pulse below the injury. You don't want to cut off blood flow. Okay, elevate the injured area above the heart if possible. It's like telling the blood to take a break from flowing to the spot. To monitor, keep an eye on it. Any numbness, extra pain, or blue tinges might need to loosen the bandage a bit. One thing I'll say is after providing bandaging, we talk about after bandaging, make sure you can still feel the pulse below the injury. After you move someone, um, you might bandage them, move them. After moving them, if you need to move them, just check the bandage again. Um, I mean, between point A and point B, especially if they're, say, walking assisted, you just never know what will happen. The bandage can move. Maybe they're not the most responsive. They may not notice. You never know. The bandage may loosen. It may also tighten. If the bandage tightens, again, you have a circulation issue. If the bandage loosens, you have to do it again. So just keep an eye on it, especially if you have to transport the person. Okay. Wound care in the wilderness. Okay. So chances are you probably won't have gloves, but take what precautions you can. Wound assessment, determine the type of wound and severity. Is it a scrape, cut, puncture, or animal bite? Stop the bleeding. Apply direct pressure with a clean cloth or gauze. Remember, pressure is key. Clean the wound. Rinse with clean water or a saline solution to remove debris. Keep it as pristine as a mountain stream. All right, disinfect. Use antiseptic wipes or solution to reduce the risk of infection. Dress the wound. Apply a sterile dressing or bandage. Secure the dressing. Use adhesive strips or bandages to keep the dressing in place. I'll throw this in there. Again, in a wilderness first aid situation, you may not have everything in your toolkit that you necessarily want, or your first aid kit. So securing the dressing with adhesive strips or bandages, that's ideal. That may look like something like maybe ripping off a piece of a t-shirt. You just never know what you may end up using, but use what you can that seems practical and clean if you don't have the ideal tools. Okay. Um, all right. Change. Actually, I had a situation like that where it was just car camping. We didn't think to bring a first aid kit, and it's laughable now because everybody was okay, but it was just something very silly. A friend was trying to open a can of beans. Literally, we were out in the woods. We were off grid. This is in Northeast Canada, where I'm from. And I think he was trying to use a spoon to open the can. Anyway, long story short, about one quarter, he cuts about a quarter deep into his like index finger. So his finger's just leaking and leaking everywhere. And we did have to use some improvised um, cloth to stop the bleeding, get him out of the woods. Okay, so change dressing, regular switch. Oh, sorry, I skipped a point. Monitor the infection. Okay, change dressings, regular switch out dressings to promote healing, and then evacuate if necessary. If the wound is severe, evacuation may be needed. In the case I just mentioned, the wound was severe enough with our kind of impromptu, kind of like ripped sleeve first aid that it made sense for us to leave the woods, hike back out in the night, and get him proper care. Okay. How's everybody doing? Is everybody still alive? They're still awake? Okay. Yep. Okay. There we go. Okay. So, perfect. I feel like I need that guy who was screaming at the start just to come back, just to get the energy up. Let's see. All right. So, splinting and immobilization. Okay. So, why splint? To prevent further injury, reduce pain, and stabilize the affected area. So assess the situation, ensure safety first, check for any immediate dangers to you or the injured person, identify the injury. Again, look for signs of fractures, dislocations, or sprains. If in doubt, treat it as a fracture. Gather materials. Again, why we're just saying treat it as a fracture is because the fracture would be the most severe of the injuries. So again, this is I guess slightly subjective, but a fracture is going to be more severe than a dislocation or a sprain. So treat it. Again, you don't necessarily know out in the field. I know for sure. I don't. I'm not a. Um, I'm not an MD. I'm not an EMT. I don't necessarily know the difference. So chances are you won't either. So just treat it as a fracture. Gather materials. Use what you have. Sticks, foam pads, clothing, or backpack straps can all serve as makeshift splints. Padding is key. Before splinting, pad the injured area with soft materials to prevent pressure points. Splint application, immobilize the injured area, include the joints above and below the injury. The splint should be snug, but not so tight that it cuts off circulation. All right, check circulation. Again, check circulation after the splinting. And like I said before, after transporting the person, just please check the circulation again. Um, Something about people being in transit can just really change how that's fitting. Okay, monitor and adjust. Keep an eye. There you go. Splint may loosen. Again, keep an eye on it. And then seek professional help. Splinting is a temporary solution. Always aim to get the injured person to professional medical care as soon as possible. Um, yeah. Again, your goal here isn't to, um, become an MD or something of that nature. It's just to, be that bridge, get them to the professionals. All right, recognizing and treating shock. Let's change this bit. There we go for readability. All right, recognizing and treating shock. Symptoms to watch for. I've personally been in shock before. Just raise your hand if you've been in shock before. Oh, there we go. That's interesting. I heard that many people died after your Las Vegas shooting from shock. Yeah, there we go. A lot of people. So I'll give you a bit of an anecdote from my own life. The last time I was in shock, I know Alan can probably relate to this, but I was on my bicycle in Ottawa, Ontario, and I was anyway. A car steered into me, hit me. I was ejected off my bicycle and ended up on the ground. And the funniest thing is that I actually had no injuries, but after a traumatic event like that, the brain has a way of tricking you into thinking you're injured. So I called the paramedics. I had an ambulance come check me out. They keep telling me, Justice, you're fine. You're absolutely fine. And I'm saying, no, I was just hit by a car on my bicycle. How can I be fine? I was ejected from the bicycle. And they said, well, you're fine. Stop it. Smarten up. And then they got on their ways. So um, anyway, so recognizing and being shock. Symptoms to watch for: cool, clammy skin, rapid, weak pulse, fast, shallow breathing, nausea or vomiting, dizziness or fainting, pale or ashen skin. All right. Ensure safety. Make sure the scene is safe for you and the victim. Call for help if possible. Send someone to get a communication device if in range, to use a communication device if in range. Lay them down. That's one thing I'll comment about the new Garmin and Reach devices. Um, you can send messages out, you send communication out, which is great, handy to have. Or a satellite phone like a Zoleo. Lay them down, carefully place the person on their back if they're not already, and raise their legs about 12 inches if there are no injuries preventing this. Maintain body temperature, use blankets or extra clothing to keep them warm. Loosen clothing, ensure nothing is tight around the neck, waist, or anywhere that could restrict blood flow. Do not give anything to eat or drink. It could cause complications. Monitor, keep checking their breathing, pulse, and level of consciousness. Reassure them by talking to them in a soothing voice. Okay. So now heat-related illness. And gosh, if for whoever's in San Antonio or Austin, um, actually I'll point out San Antonio. Um, I went to this was just in September. Sorry, in October I went to Government Canyon Park, which is on the west side of San Antonio, and there's a big sign at Government Canyon that said we had 39 heat-related rescues over the summer. So, yeah, definitely a bit of a shocker if you've been to Government Canyon. There's not a lot of elevation gain or loss. It's really just, and there's a fair amount of tree coverage depending on where you are. So it's really just a cause of people not staying hydrated, I believe, and just not necessarily knowing their own limitations when the heat is over like 40 Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So, heat exhaustion, what you're looking for is heavy sweating, weakness, fatigue, dizziness, headache, nausea, or vomiting, and then pale and clammy skin. Then, heat stroke, you're looking for high body temperature over 103 degrees Fahrenheit. I believe that's 41 degrees Celsius. Hot, or sorry, that's 40 degrees Celsius. Hot, red, dry, or damp skin, and then rapid, strong pulse, and then possible unconsciousness. So immediate actions, move to shade, get the person out of direct sunlight, cool down, apply cool wet cloths or bathe in cool water. Hydrate, encourage drinking water or sports drinks for electrolytes. Something I bring backpacking, um, which is a little bit old school, but actually just the sodium tablets. They're just salt tabs, just little blocks of salt that kind of act in the same fashion. But something, you could also have Pedialyte, um, LMNT, whatever your preferred kind of electrolyte replacement is in a first aid kit. Okay, loosen clothing, remove excess tight or heavy clothing, monitor, watch for changes in condition, seek help. Yeah. Yeah, Alan's first aid kit is 10 pounds. Yeah. With just saps. But yeah, I am drinking saps tonight. It's great stuff. Made in San Marcos. And now seek help. Heat stroke is a medical emergency, so call for help immediately. Um, the last time I had a heat related illness personally, I was on a backpacking trip in Honduras, and it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And I think after that, I really just had a better respect for the heat. Um, yeah. Okay. So cold related emergencies. Um, gosh, these are nothing to be trifled with either. Growing up in Eastern Canada, um, we had, I knew a couple of young guys who ended up in literally dead in snowbanks. So really nothing to be trifled with. Um, so hypothermia, we have shivering, which may stop as hypothermia worsens. Slurred speech. Actually, I just realized, let me make this tab larger for everybody. There we go. Slurred speech, confusion, slow, shallow breathing, weak pulse, drowsiness. Now we have frostbite, cold, pale, or hard skin, numbness, tingling, or pain, and blistering in severe cases. And then we have a chilblains or chilblains, red swollen skin, itching, burning sensation, blisters or ulcers in severe cases. So immediate actions, we have seek shelter, protect from the cold, wind, wet conditions, warm gradually, use body heat or warm, not hot water for rewarming. Then we have dry clothing, change into dry clothes and use blankets, hydrate and energize, provide warm, sweet drinks, non-alcoholic and high energy foods. I'll add to that. Again, just don't. I think there's a tendency to want to provide people hot food, but that's really not what you want to do. It says warm here, but I may almost omit that, but just make sure you're not giving them anything too warm. Frostbite care, protect affected areas, do not rub or apply snow. Monitor and seek help. Keep a close eye on the person. Hypothermia and severe frostbite require professional medical treatment. Yeah, that's really nothing to be trifled with. Okay. Okay, wildlife bites and stings. So be aware of common biting, stinging wildlife in the area, snakes, spiders, insects, etc. Recognizing symptoms. So a bite is going to be a puncture wound. There will be swelling, redness, and pain. and then a sting, sharp pain, swelling, redness, itching, hives. So just to take a quick stop, um, this is a personal anecdote. I was just backpacking in Florida a week ago, and yeah, I think I was on day 3 or 4 of backpacking. I did have cell phone service, but there's a couple bites I kind of found on my outer thighs, and I wasn't quite sure what those were. Um, yeah, I had cell phone service, so I could look that up while I was there and kind of see what was going on. But again, if you don't have cell phone service, maybe you're going to go dark or off grid for a week. Um, just do yourself a little bit of. Oh, actually, there's another story from that too. But just do a bit of homework, find out what the local flora and fauna are. Actually, a great story out of that too is I actually stepped on a yellow ribbon snake while I was hiking, and the yellow ribbon snake was huge. It jumped at the person I was hiking with, and that was a bit of a shock. Afterward, we're Googling, you know, black snake, yellow stripe to try to figure out what it was, if it was venomous. Um, Again, that's just me giving you a very truthful anecdote from something that happened recently. Um, Again, there's tons of different flora and fauna out there. I don't anticipate a cursory Google search will help you understand everything that's out there, but um, you can curate that in a way to at least mitigate some of your fears or worries. So maybe that could be, venomous snakes, North Florida, or venomous spiders, North Florida, or common insect bites. Just take 30 minutes, and that'll give you a lot of peace of mind. Okay. So, yeah, yeah. The person I was hiking with was just fine. Yeah, she was just fine. Um, it was it was fun. It was a fun. She didn't get bit by the snake. It just kind of jumped at her and shoot. I was showing her the fangs. But she's tough. She's a great girl. She's also my girlfriend. She's great, great girl. She did great. Okay, so immediate actions: stay calm, reduce heart rate to slow the spread of venom. Safety first. Move away from the animal, insect to avoid further harm. For bites, clean the wound with soap and water. Apply a clean bandage. For stings, remove stinger if present. Scrape it out sideways with a flat object. So, scraping it out sideways with a flat object, if I'm in that situation, looks like something like probably a debit card, a credit card, maybe my library card. I don't know. But that's the first thing that comes to mind. Reduce swelling. Apply a cold pack or clean cloth, cold with cold water. Monitor symptoms. Watch for signs of allergic reaction or infection. Then seek medical help if the bite sting is from a venomous creature or if it's an allergic reaction. So that's something I'd throw in there is that um, one thing I always bring hiking. Um, it's just like um gosh, the name is eluding me here, but just basically allergy medication. Oh, sorry, an antihistamine. So you know that also helps you with your peace of mind because you're like, was this from a plant that I rubbed up on? Did something bite me? Why is my skin red? If you take that antihistamine, that may also help you determine what the actual cause is. Okay, so now we have poisonous plants and allergic reactions. So you're going to want to familiarize yourself with common poisonous plants in the area, as I mentioned. So I just have a couple examples: poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, and then recognize exposure. Itchy rash, red streaks, or genital redness, swelling, blisters, or hives, difficulty breathing, symptoms of allergic reactions, swelling of the face, lips, or eyes, difficulty breathing or wheezing, rapid heartbeat, dizziness, or faintness. And then immediate actions: avoid touching or scratching, rinse with water, clean clothing and gear, apply calamine lotion or hydrocortisone cream for itch relief, cold compress, apply to ease swelling and discomfort. There we go. Antihistamines can help relieve severe itching and swelling, then seek medical attention. Um, and that's the thing, right? Immediate actions. And this is something that um, I'm just going to use the last trip I took was, off grid. We had to, carry in our own water, and we had to filter our own water if when we ran out, carried in all of our food. Um, something you have to consider is that, rinsing with water, cleaning clothes and gear, that may seem pretty straightforward, but you also have to make that decision. How many liters of drinking, or sorry, ounces of drinking water do I have? And am I going to use all my drinking water to, put on this poison ivy um, area, area that was affected by poison ivy, or is it best to just kind of tough that out until I get more water? And same with cleaning clothing and gear. If you just have 3 liters or 2 liters of clean drinking water, you're not going to necessarily want to use all that water to, again, clean the poison ivy oil out of your clothes. So something to keep in mind. Always make sure you're slim the pressure me mobilization bandage. Okay. Oh, and one thing I'll throw in there just to add to Max's comment. That's good, interesting to know actually. Um, and this is another true anecdote is that about the wildlife bites and stings. When I moved to Texas from Canada, where we don't have poisonous snakes. We do have a poisonous spider called the brown recluse. But, I saw all these products that were marketed as like snake venom plungers. Like you put them on the snake bite, and then you like plunge the venom out. Yeah, that's no pun intended, but that's complete snake oil. I believe it's proven now that those like plungers for plunging the venom out may actually make the situation worse. So, um, yeah, be very, very conscious and conscientious. I'm actually going to make a note of that. Um, yeah, just be very conscientious and scrupulous if you see anything that's like snake bite this, snake bite that. Um, I just listened to a great 3-hour podcast on snake bites that the Trek put out. They're like a backpacking podcast slash magazine slash everything. And they were saying that really, depending on the situation, your goal is to determine, am I going to hike out or am I going to stay there on my side? And don't I personally Um, don't ascribe to any of those things like plungers for venom. And unfortunately, it's not cost effective to hike with anti-venom. So, okay, sorry, off on a tangent. Let's get back to it. Yeah. So here we go. That's pretty much everything I have for. We went way ahead of schedule, which is interesting. But really, just what are your key takeaways from today? Any surprises or new insights? Feel free to, you know, jump off the to unmute yourself. Um, this is our first time. This is my first time running this class, so this is something I just put together. So your feedback's invaluable. So any thoughts are very much appreciated.
Hey, Justice, I did have a question.
Sure.
Are the first aid kits that you get at like REI or whatever, just the prepackaged ones, are those usually adequate? Do they just have pretty much what you need, or do you recommend additional stuff like other than the sodium tablets?
Yeah, sure. Oh, great. It's good to know. Yeah. So I'm just gonna mute the. Thank you for posting in the chat, guys. I'm just gonna close it so I can focus on Max's question. But yeah, I mean, for me, I'm gonna open that first aid kit and just determine, are those bandages? Do I think those bandages suffice? Um, I've definitely bought kind of a generic first aid kit before, and I'm like, man, these band-aids are kind of trash. They're just not what I'm looking for, or maybe I feel like there's not enough gauze. Um, I know one thing. Say for like weekend hiking is like we try to also hike with something called like an ankle kit, which is like everything we need to support somebody's ankle should they have a potential fracture or sprain. Um, But yeah, I'd say antihistamines. Just check like if there's antihistamines in the first aid kit. I'm not sure if there would be, but just throw in like some Allegra or just whatever you like. I like the sodium tablets because they have a good shelf life, but also like Pedialyte, LMNT, anything with a lot of sodium. That's a good point. There may not be tweezers. Um, and yeah, there's really nothing off the top of my head that I can think of besides that, but maybe super glue. Super glue would be one. I don't know if you're gonna get super glue in your kind of REI first aid kit, but I'd like to have that. That's a great question though. Yeah. And that's something I'm happy to do is go do like a what's in your bag. That's a great idea. Whoever mentioned that. Yeah, Katiekins or Katie. Yeah. And yeah, high energy foods for hypothermia. That's a really good point. I know it's something that people don't necessarily consider is that um, I don't have the graph in front of me, but I'll add that for sure. Is that the caloric intake you need when you're in a very cold environment is going to be a lot higher than when you're in a very warm environment. So chances are, if you're too cold, um, you're probably hungry as well. I don't know if anybody here's a scuba diver on the call, but I know um, something that scuba divers get. When I got certified, my instructor called it the scuba hungries, and you're thinking that's weird because the water's not all that cold, but it's just your body is in. If your for your body to stay warm in like 20 degrees Celsius water. Sorry guys, I don't know the Fahrenheit here, but the calories needed to do that are so much higher than the inverse. So whenever your body has to heat itself up in a cold environment, you're using more calories. So scuba divers, even in warm climates, they tend to get extremely hungry because their entire body is submerged in water that may be slightly colder than their core body temperature. Um, let's see. So sharing circle. I'd just love to hear where we take a couple minutes and just hear some um, not necessarily first aid nightmares, but just if y'all want to gossip or talk about some situations where you were in the wilderness and you had to either apply first aid or you had to receive first aid. Anybody? I'm gonna just poke somebody out of the crowd here. Alan, you definitely have a story. Give me one, Alan. Come on. Or Kara, do you have a story?
I
Let's hear
do.
it. Okay.
I was hiking here in the Austin area, and my friend just fluke fell down and broke her ankle on the trail. And one of the things you talked about was so key was just staying calm and assessing and trying to figure out how can we
Yeah.
get out of here. And eventually we came to the conclusion, yeah, we can't get out of here with a broken ankle. And so we did have to call for rescue, but just the staying calm was really, really paramount.
Yeah. That's great. That's well, I'm sorry to hear that happen, but that's huge. Yeah, just like any with anything, like I know with snake bites, that's a huge one. Like if you get bit by a snake, venomous snake, really the main thing you can do, call for help, depending on the situation, whether you can hike out or not, or you have to wait for first response is just staying calm, just regulating your heartbeat, slowing everything down so the venom doesn't course further and further through your body, or sorry, faster through your body, or um, yeah, staying calm is just paramount. And one thing I'll add, I just saw a comment from Jill. Sorry, Max, I'll jump right to you after I respond to Jill's thing, but this is actually kind of funny, but permethrin spray for pants, socks, sleeping bags. It, Permethrin's great, but you're really not supposed to spray your socks. Um, so it's funny, but my friend is actually a manager at Sawyer who makes permethrin. Funny enough, and if you spray any clothing that'll actually touch the body with permethrin, most people will get a very severe reaction to that. And so it's just food for thought. I know actually when I even just went to go buy some permethrin 2.5 weeks ago at a local outfitter, one of the employees was talking about how it happened to them as they sprayed their base layer of clothing, and they just had a terrible experience like none other. So with permethrin, it is tremendous, and I use it all the time. But just make sure you're not spraying the base layer of clothing that's actually touching your body, whether that's your underwear or whatever that may be, the t-shirt base layer. Yeah, or I guess you could spray your socks, but just make sure they're on top of other socks that you haven't sprayed. And I spray my shoes too. Always spray my shoes in my bag, and you can spray the tent. Yeah, so just food for thought. Okay, and Max, I'd love to hear your story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it was more of like a near miss, but actually is the reason why I got a Garmin InReach. I was hiking in central Louisiana alone, and I actually got struck like 2 holes in my leg by a cottonmouth.
What?
Like I felt something hit the back of my leg, and I turn around and the cottonmouth's got like, its mouth wide open with that really white inside mouth and everything. And so I ran into 2 more copperheads that hike, and I realized I got to get out of here. But it took my parents, they were only like 30 minutes away. It took them about 2.5 hours to come pick me up because GPS was so screwed, like cell and everything was so screwed up in that area that, I mean, it took me 45 minutes just to reach them by phone, but 2.5 hours for a 30-minute drive just to find me because GPS was so screwy and like cell service and everything. So yeah, it's my plug for InReach. It's cell service. You definitely can't rely on it for sure.
Wow. Well, you should definitely go sell InReach as a part-time thing, I guess, my friend, because that's a story. Um, and you were okay though, Max? Like you were.
Yeah. I mean, it just scared the crap out of me. But
Oh
it's not
wow.
like, I mean, cottonmouth's not like a fatal bite, but it's nasty. It'll kill a lot of the tissue in that area. So definitely would not have been ideal. And
Yeah.
I don't know how I would have gotten out of there. It wasn't like it wasn't an area that had rangers or anything. It was just like just like a wilderness area that was completely unmanaged. So it was definitely a sketchy place to be alone.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, we're based in Texas, and I'll say that the last time I was at Big Bend National Park and the last time I was at Guadalupe National Park, um, yeah, I didn't see a single ranger, and you'd think, okay, national park, but the reality is that even a lot of these state parks, once you get through the gate, you might not see anybody, especially if you're hiking in the backcountry, or maybe you're going camping to one of those primitive campsites, like you know, you're not going to see like Susie, the front desk person or something out there. Like it's just going to be you and other people who are camping. So okay, okay. So Alan can't unmute us up, but yeah, thank you for sharing, Max, and I'm happy to hear you're okay. That's terrifying to me a bit. So Alan, Martin Creek years ago on a mountain bike. Alan's mic's not working, so I'll read it out for everybody. On a mountain bike in the summer, very hot. And I've bordered on heat stroke, set myself up halfway in the water. But so if I passed out, I wouldn't fall in and drown. Took a half hour to cool down. Wow. By the way, I have no audio. Okay. So there we go. So Katie, one time we were in the woods for 2 weeks, dropped some Skittles in the rain and dirt. Wasted, found those Skittles 2 days later and ate them. Jeez. Okay. That's a great one. Okay. Okay, does anyone else have a story, or let me jump? I can jump to the next slide. So yeah, really wrapping up and looking ahead. Um, yeah, thanks everyone for the feedback. Um, I appreciate the comments. That's really good. Food for thought. And Definitely going to go back in and add a couple images to make it a little bit more engaging. If anybody wants me to share the slide, I can share the slide deck as well for your own viewing. Just let me know. But yeah, wrapping up and looking ahead, there's 3 more parts to this. So this is part 1 of 4. And yeah, anyway, thanks for joining and teaching this is, I'm getting a lot out of teaching this, so I appreciate y'all for jumping on, because that helps me be a better hike guide and all that fun stuff. Okay, I'll share the slide deck with the images. Okay, all. Well, again, have a great night, and yeah, this was a fun one, and we definitely finished a bit early, so I'm excited about that. So 8:40, so took about, we started at 7:30, so just like a nice 1 hour. Okay, all right, y'all. Well, have a great night, and thanks for joining. All right, cheers. I'll send the slides, y'all. Don't worry.